So today we're talking about something that I guess is controversial. I had no idea people really had, issues with it. I'm confused on how to start this video because I just never knew that this was a problem until I started seeing hate comments on my videos and then other people's videos. And that topic is living with your parents still. Now, I'm not talking about when you're a child or when you're 18 going to college or whatever. I'm talking about 25, 30, 35 area. Because at least with my experiences, I saw that was rising a lot more, at least where I used to live in New Jersey, because the prices were so ridiculous that people had no choice. They couldn't buy a house that was like $600,000 when they just started working a normal 9 to 5. But there are some people on the internet who are pretty pissy about it. So we'll just get into some clips and we'll talk about them.
Let's talk about living at home in your late 20s. First of all, the economy sucks and we are in a cost of living crisis, so all judgment needs to exit stage left immediately. But I'm 29 and I live at home with my parents. I've had my own place. I've lived with friends. I've lived with my partner. But I'm at home because it truly is the best decision for me at this stage in my life. And while I would love my own place, and I'm planning on doing that very soon, the reality is that living at home is smart, y'all. Living at home is comforting. Living at home for me right now is a blessing. And I'll continue to do that as long as it serves me. And when you really think about it, we are still toddler adults. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing out here. And
now this is the only thing that I disagreed with in the whole video. I don't know. It seemed like it was a joke a while ago, but now it starts to seem like coping and just not taking responsibility. But there's a whole bunch of people even older than me saying that they don't know how to adult. They don't know what adulting is. They don't know what they're doing even though they're an adult. And I mean, I get it to a point, but I'm only 26 and I feel like I know what I'm doing now. So I don't know. The rest of the stuff that she's saying is still pretty accurate.
Times are different, the market is different, groceries are different, but somehow salaries are still the same they were 20 years ago. Make it make sense. So I'm taking things one day at a time, and when those things change, so will my address. But for now, here we are.
So I guess a lot of people have problems with this for some reason. They don't like when people who are older are still living with their parents. Now, I moved out of my parents' house about 9 months ago now, and I moved out because I was ready to. I had enough money, I had enough savings that if anything went wrong, I have like several years, honestly, worth of cushion to learn something, get a different job, do whatever, and I couldn't have done that without my parents. But I've seen comments on this channel, on other people's TikToks talking about living with their parents on my other channel that I talked about, which is more of like a finance business channel, that there's comments like this: not everyone can mooch off their parents until they save enough money for a townhouse. Isn't that what family is supposed to be? Now, my parents took care of me my whole life. You know, when I was a kid, going to school, feeding me, all of that, like parents are supposed to do. And that gave me the opportunity that after I dropped out of community college, it just wasn't the avenue for me. I began reselling items online and simultaneously having a part-time job until around a little bit after the beginning of COVID. I realized that I could do the reselling stuff full-time. I could legitimately do it as an actual job, and that's exactly what I did. I made a video about it. I had about $10,000 in my bank account from all the part-time work. My parents never gave me any like startup money. I had the 10K from working a part-time job, and I grew that to over $250,000, all through sneakers, selling stuff on eBay, Goat, StockX, Flight Club, all of that. And I couldn't have really done it, or at least it would have been stunted and delayed, because I lived in my parents' house and I didn't have to pay rent and I didn't have to pay for food. My parents cooked. I didn't have to waste an hour a day cooking food. Like right now, I'm spending about $4,000 a month in expenses to live on my own, which I have no problem in doing. It's not like I'm hurting, but say that extra $4,000 a month went right back into reselling shoes and being able to grow my business even faster. And that's all because I was able to live with my parents at an older age. I think at that time it was around 23, 24, and I'm not saying I had a perfect family. Like, my parents have been divorced since I was 10, and when I mainly say parents, I've been living with my dad since I moved out a few months ago. But I guess if your parents take care of you and actually care about you and love you and will help you in life even later than you should, if, you know, apparently everybody's supposed to move out as soon as they're 18, that turns into mooching off their parents to save enough money for a townhouse. But I don't know if people are just bitching because now I'm way farther financially ahead than most people, thanks to my parents and me making good decisions and being able to reinvest all of my money to make more money or save more money. But it seems like a lot of people are pretty pissed off about this, and I don't know why.
Living at home is like literally the most frustrating thing in the world, and like I feel so ungrateful for like way that I'm feeling, because I know that I'm like lucky that at least I like have a home to go to after I like left my job. Like I'm really lucky, but at the same time, like it just contributes to like so much of like a lost identity and like a loss in independence. Like someone is home all the time and I like don't have any privacy and I like don't have like any like spaces to myself. Coming back to like your childhood bedroom that like is just so not the person you are anymore, and like having all this like random shit and like it's not your space and it doesn't feel like your space anymore. And like side note, like my mom just decided to start renovating like half our house, so now like we're all on one side of the house and like in like another tiny room that's like not mine, and my stuff is everywhere. Not to mention like I don't see my fucking friends anymore. Like I genuinely can't just go like grab a coffee with someone after work or like meet them for lunch. Like I'm just in a different town, like miles and miles away. And don't even get me started on like the fact that you probably can't even date anyone because your parents are like all up in your business and like you've nowhere to like no space to bring them into. I feel so stupid for complaining about all of this because like people literally like are homeless and dying, and like I'm complaining about being in my parents' house. Champagne problems.
I don't know how to feel about this clip because I guess I understand, but at the same time, I was in the exact same situation and I wasn't complaining about it because I knew I wasn't going to be able to like date normally or like have a girlfriend really until I moved out of my parents' house. And that was partially because, yeah, it would be pretty awkward bringing somebody to like your room that you've lived in since you were like a child. But at least actually for me, I made my own rule because I knew I wanted to move out of my childhood hometown because everybody ends up staying there forever, that I didn't want to date anybody in that general area because it would make me actually stay there. And I knew that that wasn't what I really wanted in the long run. So I moved down to North Carolina and found my girlfriend here, but I don't really understand the whole friends thing. At least at the time when I lived up in New Jersey, I would hang out with my friends like once or twice a week, but we all lived in the same town. I'd venture to guess if she has a job, or maybe she didn't because she said that she left the job, that she also has a car, so you can drive around. But I feel like after the college era of 18 to 21, if you still live with your parents, this is the time to be working as much as you possibly can, save as much money as you possibly can, stack it up, high yield savings accounts, investments, anything like that, because your expenses are so low. Because even though she was like crying and complaining about it, I don't think her parents were like beating her. I think she just didn't like being in a place where I am, where do you hear that? No, you don't, because it's complete silence in my townhouse. I could do whatever I want. I don't have any noises or people in the next room or whatever, and I know that that's very nice, but if you're living with your parents, you better be stacking up as much money as possible. Hopefully she does have another job, even though she said she left one, but that's what everybody around my age and younger or older needs to start doing now, because the cost of living is brutal. Now I get, if you have like issues with your parents and you want to move out, then I get it, but it will be pretty difficult for you. You need to find a decent job immediately to start paying for rent for an apartment or whatever your situation is. But I feel like a lot of people on the internet who hate on normal people living at their parents' house still at like 25, 30, 35, especially if you live around cities or anywhere that's remotely expensive. I guess they assume that all of the children are like this TikTok.
Mom, the car needs more gas. Yep. Why would I put gas in the car? It's not my car. Okay, like, it's your car. Like, you need to maintain it. It's your possession. Like, okay, this conversation is just way too much for my anxiety. Like, what are we having for dinner? You're ordering pizza? Yes.
Because most of the hate comments that I see are like old boomers that are saying you shouldn't mooch off your parents. And I mean, I was able to turn my business that literally didn't exist at all into like a sneaker resale business during like the peak of reselling during COVID. I was doing over $500,000 a year in sales. And I'm not trying to flex like, ooh, look at how much money I made. It was because I was still living with my parents and my expenses were so low that I could just sit on the computer, on the phone all day, and just constantly reinvest my money and buy and sell and ship out stuff every single day, all from my parents' house. And now I'm in a comfortable financial situation because of it. And I'm not there yet, and I have a ways to go, but I will be able to retire both my parents and myself before I die. That is a goal of mine, and that is my number one priority right now. And I would say that 99% of the people who were hating on people who are still living with their parents parents for a prolonged period of time will never be able to retire their parents. They don't even have the thought of it, even though if your parents weren't around, most likely you'd be dead. But mine helped me out during a time that I was able to make a substantial amount of money, and I still have that job till this day. I still resell full-time, and I have several other little side hustles, but I know that I will be able to pay them back one day.
1 in 10 people aged between 30 and 34 are living with their parents still. This is quite fascinating. If you think back in the day, people were getting married when they were like 20, yeah, and now we've got 30 to 35-year-olds that are still living at home. You know, like that's
It makes me feel better about my life, I will be honest.
totally, yes, yeah. But
It's like everyone's struggling. It's not just me.
yeah, and this is up 10% from a decade earlier, so it is getting worse and worse and worse. Like, at what point does that figure start going down and people start moving out of home earlier?
When it's less expensive to live out of home.
Yeah, but when does that happen? Like, you know, there's got to be
You
something.
tell me, you're the finance expert.
But that's got to be at some point. We can't be sitting here in 10 years' time and be like, wow,
45-year-olds living at home.
yeah, like, it's kind of weird.
Maybe it'll become normal.
Yeah,
because it's how
true.
expensive it is.
The only way that I could really see that, which I don't know how it would be possible or the amount of backlash it would get, would be like home prices or rental prices having a cap. Because if you watch any sort of financial video, everybody's always like, oh, if you have a ton of money, invest it into some sort of real estate, because it always ends up going up. Even if we're in a downturn of a market, within a decade or two, the price of the property will be way higher. Now, it's already becoming unreachable for a lot of people, so what's going to happen in like 30 years? It'll be so unreachable that the only people who could get a house are like genuinely wealthy, not like, ooh, I make $120,000 a year. It'll be like $300,000. I don't know how that's going to change. I don't know if, other than there being like some sort of law where it'll be capped at a certain amount, but then everybody who's ever put money into real estate would obviously go nuts, and then a whole bunch of other people will start making a lot less money. It's a mess. I don't know how to fix it, but it will just turn into more and more people living with their parents for a longer period of time. I'm just gonna leave a screenshot of this because of how difficult it is to read, and I'll read it to you guys because I don't know why you'd put black text over this, but I'm 27. I still live at home with my parents because rent in NYC in 2023 is sickening. I suck at being girly and trendy. I'm a personal trainer / coach. I think my college degree was a waste of time, and I thought my whole life was figured out, and now I'm beyond lost. Now, I'm 26, used to live in New Jersey, and at the beginning of me going to college, I was actually going to be a personal trainer because I liked working out a lot. Every single day I was really into all the fitness stuff until I realized that I was just into working out. I don't really care about helping other people work out, especially if they weren't like a bodybuilder level. Like most people who get personal trainers are like older people who are kind of out of shape. So I knew that that degree was going to be useless. So I ended up switching a couple times until I just dropped out completely. But she's in a very similar boat that I was into. And that's why I moved away, almost 8 hours away from New Jersey, and did something else with my life instead of going to college. Now, there's a lot of people in that boat right now, and I know it is very difficult, but doing something online and finding a little niche or something you're good at is probably the way to go for a lot of people now. I know it's a very broad answer of me just telling people to do stuff online. It's like, no shit, dude. Obviously, it'd be really cool if you could sit on your computer and make $200,000 a year, but it is possible. It will take a lot of time, but definitely something to look into, especially if you're not making a ton of money and you can't really get out of your parents' house right now.
The share of American young adults living with their parents is the highest in 75 years. 33%, 1 in 3, 25 to 29-year-olds live with their parents or grandparents. So here, let me help you with this, Mom and Dad. An eagle that doesn't leave the nest is what's known as a turkey. You are not blessing your children by supporting them over 25 years old. Could Mom and Dad be a safety net? Yes. But a hammock is ridiculous. There's a difference between a hammock and a safety net. It does them great good emotionally and spiritually when they leave home. When they have to buy their own food and cook it or go to a restaurant and get some, it's good for them. When they have to pay their own electric bill, it is good for them. When they have to pay their own freaking rent, it is good for them.
Now, I do understand that, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now, but I think a lot of people are expecting that all the kids or adults that are 25 around that still live with their parents are like that TikTok that I showed you like a couple minutes ago with the guy not paying for gas and getting pizza for free and all of that. But if people are struggling and can't afford an apartment or anything like that, what other choice do they have? Now, I wasn't going to live in this area, but I just wanted to look. When I was moving out to North Carolina, I looked at apartments in Hoboken, New Jersey, which is basically across the water from New York City. There was a studio apartment, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and it was like 700, 800 square feet. It was nothing, and it was $3,500 a month. And you're not even in New York City. You're on the other side, and you could look into New York City. So if you're in any area where the rent is that unbelievably ridiculous, if you want to move out of your parents' house and even do have a solid amount of money like I did, and not just winging it and going out to an apartment and see if you could stay afloat, I'd still definitely look at places pretty far away. I moved down south. I've talked about this townhouse already, but it's 3 floors, 4 bedroom, 3.5 bath with a 2-car garage, and I'm paying $22.25 a month. And in total, it's a little bit over 2,100 square feet. It's entirely too much for me. There's no reason why I ended up getting this place. I could probably get a place that's at least a third smaller and my rent would be cheaper, but I could afford it now. So if there are people watching this video that do have enough money to move out and don't want to get absolutely destroyed by rent prices if you live near a city, I would definitely start looking at other places, preferably down south and maybe even the Midwest. But we're getting to a point where this is just going to become even more common, not just with people who live near very expensive areas, but just everywhere in general. People aren't making enough money at brand new 9-to-5, cubicle jobs that they got their degree for. Prices of everything else are going up: rent, food, cars, car insurance, literally you name it. And at the same time, you have a whole bunch of older people being angry at you that your parents care enough about you to keep you in the house and take care of you, while it's becoming increasingly more difficult or impossible to ever own a house unless you're doing very, very financially well for yourself. I know the internet will always be the internet and there'll always be hate just because of the anonymity, and nobody really has any consequences for what they say most of the time. But if you have parents that love you and care about you, then try to get financially ahead as much as you possibly can, save as much money, get as good of a job as you possibly can before you end up finally being able to move out. But I've already been ranting for a while. I'm probably gonna have to cut this down. Let me know your thoughts down below and I'll pick some out for the next video to talk about. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, and I'll talk to you guys later.